Okay, guys, welcome to NAMA. Let us know that you can see and hear us. We're live streaming on YouTube, and YouTube is still a little bit of a new experience for us.
Our second month, I think, live streaming on YouTube.
So we just want to make sure everything is working. We're going to attempt to share our screen today, maybe, depending on what people are interested in. Also, let us know if you're watching us on YouTube directly or if you're watching on Facebook. I think we'd prefer that you watched us on YouTube.
Can they even watch us on Facebook?
Yeah, well, I think it can embed. I don't know. You can check. But if you comment, make sure you comment on YouTube because
I think they have to go to YouTube.
Great. On YouTube, and she's letting us know. That's good. And so if you put it in the chat there, we'll be able to see it without jumping back and forth between a bunch of different apps.
Yeah, if you comment on Facebook, we're likely to not see it until after the live stream is
over. And you guys came with a bunch of great comments and questions on Facebook, so we will be going through those at some point. What news do we have, Natalie?
Well, it's the new year.
It almost is.
In a day and a half.
Yes.
2 days, something like that. So for premium members, our December or January schedules are out. I'll get that out for everybody else probably today or tomorrow. We are going to be in California in just over 3 short weeks. We are speaking at the IPCA and ACSW joint conference on gamifying your nose work. And if you are considering going, we'd love to see you there. We're also going to be doing some other things for about a week after that in California, in Southern California. So if you're interested in any of that, let me know. We've got a game day and some classes, and we still have room for private lessons if people are interested in that. So let me know.
Yeah, so all of our California viewers, let us know if you'd like to see us while we're out there.
And what you want to do.
That's in January. I've got a couple engagements in Pennsylvania area in March and in May, different parts of Pennsylvania. And what else have we got? Do we have any other events that are important? We got our holiday party coming up this Saturday. Hopefully we'll see some of you guys there. It should be fun. What else?
I mean, tons of things.
Oh yeah, like what?
I mean, we're going to be judging in Tennessee.
Yeah,
I'm judging in Texas.
Tell me about classes.
COing. We have classes, as I mentioned at the top.
When are they public?
Hour. Today or tomorrow, as I mentioned.
Oh, okay. Today or tomorrow, the public will go out. Yes. Some people keep asking me. So
yes, for premium members, they've been out for a few days already. So if you miss those and you're a premium member, let me know so we can figure out why you aren't getting them. But everyone who is a premium member should have that already.
Yep, a lot of open classes, so there should be lots of opportunity for both local and virtual. So hopefully you guys can snag one of those. Okay, well, I think we should jump right into the topic of surviving NW3. So the first thing I want to talk about is just define what we're talking about. What are we talking about? What is NW3, and why is it such a challenge? And
why are we talking?
Talking about it exactly? So NW3 is the third or fourth, depending on how you count them, level of NACSW style nosework. It stands for Nosework 3. And so once you pass your ORTs, your odor recognition test, you do NW1, you do NW2, now you're in NW3. This is for anybody who hasn't done nosework before. NW3 is roughly equivalent to AKC master level. In NW3, we've got several challenges that get added onto what you've already been doing at the lower levels. The most notable of which probably is that you can have blank searches now, searches where there are no odor in them, and that definitely causes a lot of people anxiety.
But I think even harder are the next thing that we're
absolutely. The next thing is that it's unknown. And what I like to tell a lot of my students is that NW3 and NW2 are exactly the same. The only difference is you don't know how many. It's the same to the dog. It's only different to the handler. The handler does not know how many hides are out there when they begin the search. And that's actually a very big step up. That's a whole different ball game. It takes an NW1 search and makes it a whole other ball of wax. So that unknown number thing, that's something we'll be coming back to a lot, because now Yeah, you might have in lower levels needed to think about covering your search area, but at NW3, you have to cover your search area. It's just a requirement. You're not going to kind of accidentally stumble upon it, although some people do.
Well, and covering your search area means a lot of different things to different people.
Sure.
But if the dog and handler aren't thinking about those things, if the dog's not capable of getting everywhere they need to go, not confident enough, not driven enough, or whatever, then you will miss hides for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. The other thing is that as each level gets more challenging, the challenge of endurance gets more and more. So if you think about NW1 or Novice AKC, if you have 4 searches that are 1 hide, and then you're up in Master and you have 4 searches, or NACSW now it's 6 searches, but let's say you had 4 classes that are Master level that you don't know how many hides there are, you're usually working 2, 3, 4 times as long as you were in Novice and doing more work. That endurance catches up to you, and a lot of dogs who haven't emphasized endurance will burn out very quickly. Endurance is something that you need to be pushing, making sure your dogs are nutritionally and athletically sound, that they can work for long periods of time. If you want to make it to these levels, endurance is going to be very important.
And that they know how to rest during the day, and that the handler knows how to facilitate that rest and also facilitate keeping their motivation up.
Absolutely. Are there any other rules or anything like that we should go through about NW3?
Well, we could talk about how you pass. So
Okay.
there are 2 ways that you can acquire NW3 titles. And the first is to get 100% in 1 day, and you get an NW3.
Mm-hmm.
The second, which is recent as of a couple years ago, 2 or 3 years ago, maybe.
So it's an update for a lot of people. A lot of people finished NW3 and are starting new dogs and doing NW3 on brand new rules.
Yeah, and it does change things a bit incentives wise. But in this new way, if you make 1 error, so you miss 1 hide, or you
Call 1
time
false
out once, or you call 1 false alert, you get a leg. And you can add 2 legs together
and get a title
from 2 different trials to get a title.
Yeah. I should mention with that rule change, a couple other things were changed in addition to the ability to earn a title off of imperfect runs. The other is that they changed it so that the blank search wasn't exclusive to interiors, but the blank search could be any search. And obviously that opens up the possibility of blank container searches with distractions, which really scares a lot of people and has happened multiple times in trials. And it's something you definitely have to work for.
And also, it used to be that you always had 3 interiors.
Yeah.
And now you'll have 2 of 2 different kinds of searches, and then just 1 of the rest of the kinds of searches.
Yeah. So you're going to have 1 of every element. You'll have 1 container, 1 interior, 1 exterior, 1 vehicle. You'll have 2 bonus searches of any element, whatever the element might be.
Yeah, which really changes things because you may get to a trial where it's the searches you prefer, or you think your dog is better at, or you may get to a trial where it's the searches you wish they weren't doubling.
Yeah. And keep in mind too that the real audience for that rule change was hosts and COs. You don't always have locations that are throwing tons of good interiors at you.
Yeah, it can limit whether or not you could even have a trial.
Exactly. So allowing you freedom to have multiple exteriors, multiple containers, multiple vehicles, whatever it might be, means that you can use more locations.
Which means more trials.
More trials, exactly. So it's really not there to throw you guys a curveball. It's to make it easier on hosts.
Yeah, but it does. I mean, I may go to a trial and be thrilled that there are multiple vehicle searches, or I may go to a trial and be a little bummed that there are multiple container searches, or whatever anyone's given preferences.
Yeah, and how much I hate container searches. I don't remember the last time I did. Every single NW3 I think I did had multiple container searches, which I hated.
Of course.
Yes. What else? Any other rules that are important? Oh, this is one thing it's not exactly a rule, but it definitely, if you weren't expecting it, it definitely throws a curveball for you psychologically, which is the fact that since it's unknown numbers, you don't know whether you've passed or failed to search at an NACSW NW3s until the end of the day when they post the hide sheets.
Yeah.
You don't know. And in AKC, they tell you at the end of your run what you passed. because each search is its own qualifying event.
Yeah.
And
in their interior, master interior, you can't even go on to the next search if that's 3 rooms.
Oh, that's interesting.
You can't go on if you miss anything in the first one. So you might be all ready for 3 searches and then do one of them, which is another additional like handler stress pressure.
Absolutely. And I've known multiple students who've been caught off guard by that, about the stress of going into your first search, not knowing whether you passed or fail, and let that like stew in your brain for the whole trial day. And it can be very demotivating, very demoralizing.
Mental management becomes so important. I'm sure we'll talk about it.
It was exciting for me.
I actually really like not knowing all day.
Yeah, that's something that I was talking about at my last workshop, and has come up a few times. It seems to me there is a split among nosework competitors: the competitors who love Elite and the competitors who love NW3. And it's a very different mindset between those 2 levels. And I'm one of the people who loves NW3. And I think that mindset is definitely in the minority. Most people prefer Elite, and for good reason. Elite is much more fun in a way. More hides, more interesting environments, rule changes, a lot more freedom to call false alerts and take risks.
Yeah, the point structure is completely different, which
totally
means
different.
The incentive structure is completely different.
Yes, the game theory between 2 levels is totally different.
Completely different.
I like the challenge of NW3 of needing to be perfect. I wasn't one of those people that was super angry when they changed the rules. But I am the kind of person who gets a little annoyed when I piece together a title with legs, because I want to be perfect. So that's something that I like about NW3.
I like both trial levels, but it was interesting to me because I ran Michael's most recent NW3 Elite dog and a couple of NW3 trials, and I hadn't done NW3 in like 4 or 5 years maybe, but I had been doing Elite with 2 different dogs during that time, and NW3 was exhausting in a way that I don't find Elite exhausting.
Yeah.
And I think that was partially that you have 6 searches instead of 4, even though the searches are larger and the times are often longer in Elite. Now, of course, you can have really small Elite searches too, but getting out of the car and staging and all of that 6 times was very different.
Absolutely. Okay, let's talk a little bit about the strategy of NW3 and the training of it. I feel like NW3 is where, like, you really, truly graduate is the wrong word, but where you culminate all of your foundational skills. If you haven't done your job right in hunt drive and independence and pattern training and all of these things, then NW3 will reveal that for you. Hopefully, absolutely. And I think that in terms of the training of it, one of the things that's really important is to recognize, this is one of the first times that a lot of people will recognize where if they are not maintaining their foundations, that it really catches up to them at this level. And a lot of people feel like they get worse in NW3. They feel worse about themselves, their handling, about their dogs at NW3 level. Because I really do feel like the NW3 level is a magnifying glass. It just looks at you and your dog and points out every little error.
Yeah.
And so if you've neglected your foundation, you're going to see it here. And we've had a lot of students. When we switched over from doing regular level classes to doing 4 pillars foundation class and a patterns and handling class, we had a lot of our top level students jump back into foundation classes and report back to them that their dogs were more enthusiastic at the higher levels at NW3 and Elite, and that their dogs were doing better. They were getting more ribbons, they were getting better times, everything like that. And that's often a missing piece for handlers at this level. So make sure you're checking your ego, and how often are you returning back to single hide searches? How much are you going back to building confidence with independence? And how much are you just doing searches?
Or trying to come up with all the advanced hides you could possibly set for your dog.
That's not how you get to where you want to go. And I'm kind of on a warpath right now, but like, just stop doing so many searches, do more drills, do more skill building, do searches too, but it seems to me there's quite a few people out there who just do search after search after search after search, thinking that if you throw enough searches at the dog, eventually they learn everything they need to learn.
Yeah. Do you want to define more specifically what you mean by search versus drill?
Yeah, what I mean by a search is that so, and this is something that I define all the time. So what's one more time? But you are the dog's handler and you are the dog's trainer. The trainer's job is to train a dog so well that no matter how stupid the handler is, the dog is still successful. The handler's job is to handle the dog so well that no matter how poorly trained the dog is still successful. Both people have the job of making the dog successful, but they approach it in very different ways. Opposite ways, and sometimes conflicting ways, where you're either training or you're handling. And what I mean by doing searches is a couple things. One is, obviously, if you're doing it blind, there are drills that you can do that are blind. But in general, if you're doing it blind, you're searching. It means you're handling the dog, which means you're going to be giving the dog support that they need and help that they need to solve problems, instead of training the dog to solve those problems on their own. The second thing I mean by searching is that you are testing the dog rather than training them. So let's see what they do with this hide, instead of these are the steps to teaching the dog how to do this hide.
Yeah.
And what I see a lot of is that the dogs you feel like the dogs are being successful so much, and then I put you in a chair and make you sit down, and the dog can't do the same search. And I just did this in a class recently, and I was talking about how this kind of thing shows if you are helping the dog more than you should be, then your dog breaks down when I sit you in a chair or when I make you do certain things like walk around the room mindlessly without helping the dog. You'll see the dog will look at you and start tuning into you more for help because you've been giving them help. You don't realize it, but if your dog is leaving every search that you do, finding all the hides, it's because you're helping them.
Or setting really, really easy hides all the time.
If you're doing that, then you're probably fine. But most people aren't doing that.
No,
it's not easy to set easy hides.
It's not. But also you could be setting too many just walking and drop your nose on it hides. That's not a good thing either.
No, not necessarily. They're time and a place.
It's not the worst thing.
Now, let me talk about drills. Maybe is more important to define because it's more concrete. So a drill is something you set up for your dog with a specific learning goal in mind and a clear criteria for when the dog has met that learning criteria or not, and a clear progression so that you are meeting the dog at the level they are and building their skill. So, for example, independence. We can do an independence drill where I sit you in a chair and have a hide 5 feet away in buckets. Then it can be 10 feet away. Then it can be 15 feet away, 20 feet away. At some point, there's a distance where the dog will be unsuccessful. And what we're doing is we're mapping where my dog can be successful and pushing the limits, or maintaining wherever. Like, I don't need my dog to find a hide 100 feet away. I just don't need that. But I need to maintain that my dog can find a hide 20 feet away. I need to maintain that because if I go into competition searches over and over again on my 15-foot leash, and my dog only ever finds hides that are 15 feet away from me or less, and then they hit the end of their leash, over time, your dog will stop searching beyond that limit. Okay? So just be aware. That's just one example of how something might need to be maintained.
Mm-hmm. And drills, yes, they're for the dog, as you
Also
stated, but they're also for the handler. There are definitely drills to do for the handler and progression to track for the handler as well. If something is really hard for you, how are you going to get better at that?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. All of that. Okay, so let's talk a little bit. So I had written a document a long time ago about how to fail your NW3. So for those of you who don't know, with Lumi, my Siberian Husky,
my first nose work dog,
I failed NW3 a lot of times. I don't even know how many.
I don't know.
A lot. Double digits for sure. And so a lot of people struggle at NW3, and we'll talk about that more. But I struggled a lot.
And there were a whole bunch of contributing reasons that I don't think we'll necessarily go into, but it wasn't just one thing. We may talk about bits and pieces of different things.
No, absolutely. And that string of failures definitely shaped me into the trainer I am. But it's still surprising to me that a lot of people don't know that. They don't realize that, because it's so funny. I've transitioned in my life as a trainer. I used to be known as the Siberian Husky guy, and now she's gone. And people might think of me as the hunting guy and think of me as the guy with the lab. And they don't realize that I started off making my name with a very competitive Siberian Husky with lots of failures in my belt.
Yeah, but when she titled, she got 2 first place and a second place.
Yeah, absolutely. So I like to remind people that, like, I'm human too, and I failed plenty, and I learned from my failures. So what I'm telling you when I'm teaching you things isn't it comes from my actual practical lived experience with my dogs that I've had, a variety of drive levels, a variety of breeds, of all of that.
Yeah. And I've competed with, I think, four dogs in NW3.
Yes.
And my first nosework dog did 6 NW3s, and then I had to retire her for health reasons, and she didn't pass any of them. Under the current rules with legs, I think she would have gotten at least one title.
Lumi would have gotten her NW3 much faster too.
Much faster. Yeah. Most of those, all those failures were one little thing. There were a couple spectacular failures.
That's the only slightly bitter thing about the rule change for me, other than being able to pass on an imperfect score, which kind of is sour for me. But the main thing is looking back on Lumi and being like, oh, we could have played in elite and done all these other things. But that is what it is. You just gotta.
Yeah, she was just a little older by the time she got there. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I made 6 points here. I don't agree with all of them now, but I'm gonna go ahead and read them. So what happened was this was on an old school Yahoo forum way back in the day, so very, very long ago. And this is when I had only failed 8 NW3s. And so someone had asked, hey, does anybody have any tips for me for NW3? And I said, look, I've failed 8 NW3s, so I think I know something about how to fail. I can't tell you how to pass, but I can tell you how to fail. So the first thing I listed was don't push your dog into corners. And what I meant by that is I'd missed a lot of corner hides, and I didn't understand how the handler's role influenced whether or not a dog got into a corner or not. And I'd trained corners, and I would constantly train corners, but that wasn't enough. I, as a handler, had to support that training in my actual searching with my handling.
Yeah, and probably lack of her going into the corner was more related to you not following her.
Or even pulling them out unintentionally.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And so we do a lot of classes that are patterns and that are teaching you how to support your dog in these corners. And I don't refer to that as pushing the dog into corners anymore, because when people have this idea in their mind about pushing the dog into corners, what they practically do is they put so much pressure on the dog in the corner that the only thing the dog wants to do is get out of the corner. And that doesn't work very well. I remember one time I was doing a seminar, and I had a student there who has been doing it a very long time, maybe as long as I have been doing it. And she kept trying to push her dog into this corner. And I said, stop pushing your dog into that corner and he'll go in. And she said, but this is what I've been taught. I'm like, just try it. Just try it. What do you have to lose? And so she threw her hands up like, fine, right? And she stopped pushing in the corner, and the dog just went straight into the corner and found the hide. And it was funny. She turned around and she actually smacked me. I was like, what? What do you want? So yeah, it's
hard about being right all the time, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. So it's you've got to encourage that dog to get in that corner, but don't put too much pressure on it, right? There's a balance, and there's also supporting that in your training with teaching the dog what kind of handling means that you'd like the dog to go into a corner or not.
And this is a very specific note, but it really covers really just search area coverage.
Exactly.
How are you setting your dog up to understand how they should cover search areas? And then are you setting yourself up to know how to both support your dog, remember where they have and haven't been, make suggestions if you choose to or need to.
For example, some of those corners that I'm talking about are places where there are boundary cones that the handler is going to not allow the dog to search near those cones because they think in their head they're not allowed to go past the cones. And being a good handler means supporting the dog past those boundary cones a reasonable amount. One of the trials I failed with Minnow, Oh, that's one of the videos I really should show. I'd wanted to talk about that search for a while. It's a trial that had a really bad pass rate, and I wanted to talk about the fact that it shouldn't have, that it was handler error. Anyways, so it was an exterior search. It was a sidewalk, side of the building, and a grass field. And the search boundary went like maybe 2 feet into the grass, and that was it, right? And so there's one hide on the wall up high. Most dogs got that hide. There was a second hide in the grass. Okay, I don't know if any dogs got it, and I got second or third place, maybe third place. I got a placement ribbon in that search without finding one of the hides. And if that doesn't prove you that it's handler error, I don't know. It was an easy ground hide in the grass. If I had let her search the grass, we would have got it. But nobody let their dogs into the grass. So whose fault is that? Is that the dog's fault? It was a little bit, because I could have trained her to pull against me more and not be so amenable to everything I was suggesting. But I didn't. She and I were both happy to just work that wall up and down forever. And you guys know how many grass hides we do in class. So
yeah, and as the handler, we should not have, I think it's something we should talk about on its own as well, but we should not have these silly ideas in our head that even if there's only 2 feet of grass, that the CO is not going to put a hide in it. Why not? I also, once it was pouring down rain, was in an NW3, I think it was with Hazel, and there was an awning section and then a grass section, and we worked the awning section, got a hide or two, and then I sort of said, okay, like, you go into the grass and work that, and I'll stay under the awning. That didn't work. We missed a hide. And again, could I have trained more for that? Sure. But if I am going to go out and compete in that weather with my dog, I should go be in that space with them and allow them to work it properly.
Yeah. Dave's adding to this that often handler direction, like check the corners, just makes the dog pay attention to the handler who isn't the corner. That's exactly right. Absolutely.
Or isn't in the corner, which is what he said.
Who isn't in the corner. Yeah, but it also isn't the corner, right? Yes. Like, if you want the dog paying attention to the corner, you don't want them paying attention to you.
And that's very much about, teaching both the dog and the handler how to navigate that without it becoming about paying attention to the handler.
The second point that I made was ignore your dog when she is showing you that there's converging odor. And so I think what I meant by that is that in NW3 at the time, at least, and I would say that's still the case, that the challenges that COs are willing to set are a little bit higher. And if you're not open-minded to what your dog might be showing you about that odor, and you're like, no, it's got to be here, it's got to be there.
Again, expectations. Would they put it in the grass? Yes, they would. Would they set elevation? Yes, they would, etc.
Exactly. So allow yourself that open-mindedness that, yes, you have to cover your search area, but you also have to use the most important tool you have in that search environment, which is your dog. Your dog knows, you can use their nose and they can do these things. So make sure you're paying attention to that. Third point I made was force your dog to search for longer than they need to because you are nervous, especially in containers when they're more likely to alert on food. This is probably one of the biggest points. Yeah. I would say this is the number one reason for failure in NW3 is staying in a search environment too long. Would you say that that's the same for Master?
What the statistics are now. I see both in Master. I see staying too long. The search areas are much smaller in Master, people staying so it's a little different. Short? But I do see people run around real quick if they didn't. If the dog didn't find an easy hide in a couple seconds, they say finish. I see both extremes. I sometimes see that when I set things that are a little more challenging, that they don't give the dog the time they need to work them out. But it's not, it really depends. It's somewhat regional.
For sure. And for sure, the culture of like competing and competitors ebbs and flows. Yes. And so I see people doing like these one pass wild Hail Mary searches. And I'm like, wow, you could have, gone once around again. It's a very complex search area or something.
And I think it depends a lot on what people have been seeing in trial.
And what their last failure was.
Yes. What their last clinician told them to do.
Yes. That definitely.
What they're overcompensating for from before.
Absolutely. So yeah, I would definitely say, especially if you're new to NW3, play around with not staying out longer than you think you should. Like, how much time is really reasonable to stay in that area? Cover it and then be done with it, because it's easy to use a crutch. Like, I'll just call finish when I hear 30 seconds. Just keep going around and around and around and around until they call 30 seconds.
Yeah, which I fortunately see less of than I used to.
Yeah, it used to be very common, and I don't recommend it.
And also, we're also not recommending to go crazy fast and just assume you're done.
No, but
it's
just
all
have
about
a reasonable
balance
expectation of how long it should take to cover that search area.
And what it means for your particular dog to cover a search area.
Yeah.
You know, we've got all different size dogs, all different age dogs, ages of handlers. You know, what do you and your team need to do to be accurate while not falling into those mind games of, you know, there has to be another one or there doesn't. You know, I've also seen people run out and get 2 hides and call finish. And for those of you who don't know, 3 is the maximum in an NW3 search. I don't know.
We should have talked about that during the rules.
Yes. We definitely skipped a bunch during the rules. How they knew they were done, because I didn't feel like they'd been anywhere around their search area. So I don't know if that was just the bond they have with their dog, or if they felt like this search area is not going to have more than 2. So why would I stay in here any longer? I think it's probably a combination of things.
Mm-hmm.
One thing I love in the changes we've seen recently is that you've started to see more than 1 3-hide search. For a long time, I had never seen 2 3-hide searches in an NW3 trial. And I think that's a fun spin on what can be different, what can be more challenging. It doesn't mean the hides are necessarily harder in those cases, but if we have gotten into a habit of feeling like there could only be one 3-hide search, it does changes the calculation for the handler.
Absolutely. The next point I had was to not take the entire day and your dog's comfort into account. If your dog has low stamina like mine, then every second of rest the dog gets counts, and every second of searching or even just waiting in line hurts. This is definitely the case because a lot of people get to NW3 quite quickly with a new dog. They go ORT, NW1, NW2 right off the bat, and they're jumping into NW3 sometimes barely with a year of training in their belt or a little bit more than that. And you can easily not recognize how much stress a whole trial day is costing a dog, especially if they're getting a little older or things like that.
Or if they're just like Lumi was not a high stamina dog.
She was not. And
it made a huge difference for her when Michael started giving her lunch in the middle of the day. It just really bolstered her for the afternoon. And there are a lot of things for different dogs that you might be able to do to make them more able to handle a whole day.
Yeah, with Lumi, my husky, it made all the difference in the world to start feeding her a meal during the lunch, the lunch intermission. Man, that completely changed her stamina for the whole trial day.
And her attitude and everything.
Yeah, absolutely. So that made a big difference. And being aware of that's important. And I know I still see a lot of people pull their dog out, potty their dogs 30 billion times in the day, and take their dog and run the warm-up boxes 18 million times. And that's not great. That's not great. It's too much for the dog. And it's not, you want your dog at the peak of their performance, and that is not it.
And if your dog is not comfortable with resting in their crate or car for a long day, that's going to be a stress on the team, which, it's definitely something you can work on. But then I think people feel compelled to do a lot of wandering around because the dog isn't used to that. And I think that's just a cycle of not good habits for NW3.
Absolutely. A couple comments that are coming through.
I'm looking up the rule question.
Okay. Dave's mentioning a great exercise, which if you haven't done it, you absolutely need to. So in training, ask your instructor when you first think maybe we're done. If you don't test the boundary between too early and too late, you won't know where it is. Absolutely. You should be saying, look, this is the first time I thought maybe we're done with the search area. Am I right or wrong? Ask your instructor, or don't, if your instructor is willing to give guidance and help during the search, which I think most instructors are more than happy to do blind with help. That's the point of class, right? Is that you can get help during it. It's a great, great resource.
Yeah. And anything we're talking about, we're not saying just do it. We're saying train it and find ways to train it with people, train things on your own, however you can train things. Search area coverage is not something you're just going to know how to do. It's all stuff you have to train.
Sorry, I'm trying to look at the rule book.
Yeah, that's not going to help you because I'm not on the right page yet.
No, I know. Okay, so next one was fall for the mind games. Fall for the mind games that the CO plays. Long times in a big search area. Does that make you think there's going to be lots of odor? Not necessarily. We used to get that a lot. I think that's a little bit less common. It's more common to see shorter times now, I feel like.
I think you see both. And I think one thing you see now is a lot of variety.
I don't think they give big time limits in NW3 anymore.
Sometimes you can get, what do you mean by big time limit?
I don't think I've seen anything over 5 minutes.
Oh, no. No, you weren't seeing over 5 minutes back then either.
Yeah, I did. The first NW3 I watched, Ron said a 5-minute search. Okay. That was one high.
The first couple NW3s were a totally different ball game. Yep. So we had a question a while back in the rules. Can you have more than one blank search? No, you still cannot have more than one blank search.
So yeah, that's a trick that they used to play a lot and that they're still playing at higher levels. And it's not a good thing to fall for, but it doesn't matter what the trick is. Mostly those tricks are just played on by your own brain. So in NW3, you're getting short to reasonable time limits. I know what you're saying, but there aren't long time limits in NW3.
But there also aren't really much in the way of time pressure searches. They're
it depends
more
on your dog.
Or less reasonable. Yes, it does. And also, I was going to say,
I would say there are time pressure searches because I run dogs that are slower than yours in general. So,
well, your current dog is not really.
Maggie?
No, not that one. She hasn't competed yet.
Yes, she has.
She's an English bulldog for those of you who don't know. But someone also, you said not big search areas. What you think is a big search area?
Big search areas.
Or not long times. But anyways, anyone's interpretation of these could be different. So we don't have to belabor that point.
No. I'm just saying they're not doing that trick as much anymore.
You never know if they might start.
Also, you look at a particular room and you think that will look like a good room for a blank room. Stop playing those games. Or you look at and even some judges will play into these ideas. So don't think about, the judges are on the wrong side of the cars, therefore it can't be on this side. I've had students come to me and say, a judge at the last trial said that I wasted so much time on the other side of the cars and they couldn't even see me, so it couldn't have been a high. It's like, well, look, I've been to trials where the judge was on the wrong side of the car. You say alert, and they just look and they say, yep, you're in the right space, roughly. So
there are plenty of judges who do that on purpose.
Absolutely.
So I don't think it's worth even paying any kind of attention to where a judge is in a search.
No,
but that's not limited to NW3. That's at any level.
The point of this part is focus on doing your job, covering your search area, and don't play the mind game of, I think this is going to be, there's been only a couple hides so far, so this is going to be the 3-hide search, or there was a 3-hide search, so there won't be another 3-hide search, or I got a longer time limit or a shorter time limit, thus I can guess how many hides there will be. Don't fall for that.
And even if you called something blank and the rule is you can't have more than one, what if you were wrong? What if there was a hide that you missed? So you don't necessarily want to not handle like every search could be 0 to 3. Just handle like it's 0 to 3, even if you are pretty sure you've already found a 0 search and you aren't going to find that again. And of course, you also might not have a blank. And if you get to thinking that you're always going to have a blank, which is definitely not in the rules, then you could mess yourself up on that too.
Yeah.
Any assumptions we're making have high potential to mess us up.
The 6th point that I made was listen to the conversations about the searches during the trial day, that meaning. Even after everyone has run an element, misinformation can spread that can ruin the rest of your day. This was really a problem when I was first starting out in nose work. Everyone kind of wanted to go off to the side and discuss, how many did you find? How many did I find? And so many people would ask me, I'm like, sorry, I don't do that. I'm not willing to talk. I'm like, but everyone has run this search. It's like, sorry, I don't do that.
NW3 is a whole day, and the whole day, everything is in play until mentally. Yeah. Until the scores are finalized and the numbers are posted. Anything that you're adding into your brain about what you think happened that day, it can work against you.
Yes. So I those were the 6 points that I made, and I think most of them still hold for the NW3 level. So,
and for anyone who got confused partway through, that was the list of things of how to fail in NW3.
What not to do.
Yes.
Exactly. Maybe I'll post that list. Maybe I won't. I need to edit it at least because it was the thoughts of a much younger me. Um, so yeah, very a lot to learn there. Let's start looking at some of your questions that you guys had given us. Um, let's see. The first question that I saw, I'm noticing from a lot of people, some people are wondering why all the stress, and some people are saying, yes, I hate this. I hate the
Yes.
stress of this. So it's very funny that you get all this. Judy's talking about she likes NW3 and that she did all her stressing in NW2. Yeah, I really like NW3 too, and I think once you wrap your mind around it, it is a really fun level.
And I also think that different people's brains interact with rules differently. And so some people are never going to find NW3 to be particularly stressful. Other people are, even once they've conquered it, they're still going to find it stressful.
Quite a few people quit at the NW3 level, and that's too bad. I think with good coaching and a good attitude, you can really make the most of it and really have fun with it.
And with some dogs, it's just harder. Some dogs just walk in and nail things. And, there are people who have gotten 3 NW3 titles in a row. And for, the bulk of us and the bulk of dogs, there are going to be little things that go wrong. And it, is going to take longer than 3 in a row.
Yes. So first question that I got here was, what are the reoccurring issues you see amongst competitors that cause them to struggle at NW3? A lot of that was on the list. But I would say probably number one for me is staying in too long and trying to push their dog into finding that last hide that doesn't exist.
Yeah. But again, I also think people being sloppy, people not letting the dog go back to the threshold, or, not remembering what they have and haven't found.
And the thing between those two things is that one is easier to fix. That one is like, oh, we totally missed that corner. Well, maybe you should take more time on your corners. Whereas if you're spending more and more time out there, it's hard to say just spend less time, because that's not quite right. That's not quite the right advice. And if you're staying out there longer, the mental pressure that's making you do that is a much stronger emotion that's harder to overcome than someone who flies around and wants to leave. You can easily just tell them, slow down. And that's easier to do than to tell someone, stop being so nervous that you missed a hide.
I don't know.
Really hard
for some people. I think they find that mounting pressure as they're in there longer so aversive that's why they're calling finish so quickly. And so they do need to learn how to work through the, just be present in the space. Just allow your dog to do what they need to do. Take the time you need to take. Don't be overly worried about getting, the top score, because you have no real influence over that in the moment. You cannot waste a bunch of time, because again, that's really important. And I care a lot about time in trials, which I know some people don't. But I do think that there's pressure on people in both directions.
It's worth really leaning into the fact that the stress of trial is one of the main things that cause people struggle at NW3, which is why, even though NW3s are basically all the same for the most part, obviously you have different hides and different numbers of hides and things like that, but the rules are the same across NW3s. It's harder to get your NW3 when it's the last one that you need. That's hard for people. And so there's something happening there. It's not that the NW3s have suddenly got harder. It's that the stress, the mental stress of that, it's the last one I need before I can play elite. Wanting to get to that goal holds people back a lot.
Well, anywhere that people are putting pressure on themselves like that will do that. Like with my second NW3 dog, we got our first title on the second try. And then we just needed one more title, and we could have played at the next National Invitational that next year. And I put so much pressure on myself, mental pressure because of that, because I really, really wanted that second title, that we didn't title for quite a while. And, then once we finally got the second one, then we got the third one pretty quickly, because I had fixed whatever it was that I mentally couldn't function in trial at that point.
Yes. So the next question is this a new struggle? I don't remember it being a struggle when I played in 2018.
You may be one of those people who jives really well with NW3s.
You may have been. It's always been a struggle. And I think my way of answering this is just to remember that a lot of people are new to dog sports, new to nose work, new to a lot of things, and not knowing how many hides there are, and just competing. It's a pressure.
Yeah.
It's a pressure. So I think that's what's going on with a lot of people, is just help coaching people. I mean, I can look at it because I've been a teacher basically my whole life. And, I look at it as, I see, is it a struggle to play a scale on a piano? No, but I remember what it was like as a child playing a scale, and I remember what it's like for my students as children trying to remember the fingerings of a scale on piano. It's not hard, but it's hard when you're there in that moment in time.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And I do think that NW3, the challenge of the hides and the searches has ebbed and flowed throughout the years of NW3. There was a time when trials were very, very hard, and then they became a little bit more consistent. So not that they were necessarily easier, but people were able to, because of the consistency, were able to figure out a rhythm and title quite a bit more. And then over the last couple of years, I think you've seen more variety in how hides are being set and the numbers of hides and the challenges. And so people haven't quite known what to expect as much. And you are seeing much lower pass rates right now. And some of that's a little bit obscured by the legs because people are still being able to title over time. But you're not necessarily seeing as many 100% titles at a lot of trials as you were in the past.
No. I went back to double check Minnow's NW3 titles, and she got 2 100% titles. I was happy to get 2. I wanted 3. And the reason I'm bringing that up is because of the next question. Why do we keep missing the third hide and interior and getting legs? I want 100%. So we'd have to look at the third hides that you're missing. But it could be it could be that there's a theme, that they're all threshold hides, that they're all corner hides, that they're all higher hides, they're all ground hides. If there's a theme, then that's important to know. Also, is only a third hide in an interior, or is it third hides in exteriors too? Because then it could be something like, maybe your dog doesn't work as well off leash. Maybe you're always letting them off leash in interiors, and in exteriors, when they're 3 hides, you keep them on leash, and you're kind of giving the dog more guidance during that search, and that could be helpful.
Or, for example, there was a 3 hides interior that Michael had that I remember watching the video from, where they had beautiful coverage of 95% of the search area, and then just quit before the last little section of search, and that's where the last hide was.
It's awful. Yeah.
So sometimes that's the case.
Yeah. But it's nice that you're getting legs because you'll be done with NW3. But yeah, I mean, we could look into all of the missed hides and what it is, but that's my guess, is that there's probably a pattern to it, and that maybe you might want to either stay on leash or consider going back on leash for a final sweep before you call finish. With the new distractor requirements at the NW2 level, are we seeing fewer distractors at the NW3 level?
I don't think
so. No, I think before the rule changes, we were seeing a lot fewer distractors in NW3. Or I remember when I was competing in NW3 with Lumi, how many people would say, "Oh, a distractor got my dog," only to find out at the end of the day there were no distractors. That happened so many times. That said,
and then people started just assuming that there wouldn't be any distractors at NW3s, that it was just a threat. And I think you've seen lots of ebbs and flows of how much people were seeing distractors. I think that different COs like setting distractors more than others. I think that depending on the other challenges of the day, they may be, some may give you them sometimes and not others. But from what I don't look at every trial that happens. I know some people do. But I've been seeing definitely plenty of distractors at NW3s. And I think your recent NW3s with Minnow, you saw quite a few distractors.
I don't think I did any NW3s that didn't have distractors. So
yeah. One of the ones where I ran her, we had a 3 hide container search with at least 3 distractors, maybe 4. So yeah, I haven't noticed that trend at all.
I'm looking up some debriefs from recent NW3 trials to look if there were distractions.
Not in that
string
one.
cheese.
Oh, they had 2 container searches. Yes, so they had a distractor.
So there was string cheese in this one. And then here's Ontario NW3, California.
I'm sure someone's got like a chart of all of this stuff.
Absolutely. Fireplace.
I don't see
Here we go.
distractors on that one for either of them. I watched a video recently of an NW3 that had 4 distractors in it.
Well, and if there's this, oh, I see 2 different days of NW3.
Yes.
Okay, sorry, I don't look at debriefs very regularly. So one with, one without so far. No distractors in this one. Oh, look, this one only had 1 container search. Why didn't I get to go to that one? That was in Fillmore, California. This one, let's see. No, blank with no distractors with 3 hides. 3 hide container search though.
Yeah, there have been a number of those recently. But I think the overall thing, I mean, this is a very small sampling of very recent trials.
It is.
But you should just expect variety.
Yeah. So one person is saying there's always distractors at trials, not all are deliberate. That's absolutely true.
Yeah,
so.
And I think it's important to remember that while distinguishing the intentionally set food and toy distractors in containers as something else.
I think
because NACSW has always purposed to not try to make things clinical or pristine.
Yeah,
that is real life searches. There's stuff out there. I had an NW3 trial with an apple sitting on a desk at like nose height for all the dogs.
But okay, so here's something that's worth adding to this conversation about NW2 and NW3 is one of the requirements at NW2 is that we're testing that the dog can work through distractions.
Mm-hmm.
At NW3, there are so many different choices that a CO has to what challenges to throw at you that it may be that distractors doesn't pop up as much. Just because
it's not going to be 100% of the time. It's going to be 100% of the time at NW2.
Exactly. It's going to be 100% of the time, but like that CO of the day might have a bunch of other challenges for you, a bunch of inaccessibles or a bunch of exteriors on grass, vehicles on grass, that kind of stuff. And they may not, like the food distractors and toy distractors and boxes just might not make the list of the most important challenges for them at that moment.
Yep.
Is the NW3 getting harder, or is it just my imagination? 4 distractors in a single container search. It's so funny to have almost opposite questions here. 4 distractors in a single container search, inaccessible hides, high hides, closed convergence less than 6 feet apart. I've been to multiple trials this season where only a single dog out of 38 got a clean pass. Are the teams getting worse, or are they just not prepared? Are the hides not working? I have to say with Minnow, as I was going through my NW3s with her, I did not feel like the NW3s were harder. I thought they were easier, if not equivalent to what they were in the old days. Now I'm getting a small sampling. I didn't do, I did quite a few NW3s with her, and they were all more or less in the Midwest. I went to Florida once. No, that was for NW2. But so I traveled a little bit, but I don't think NW3 is getting harder.
Well, I also think it depends on what you're comparing it to. Because if you're comparing the last couple of years to 2010, 11, 12, they are not as hard as they were back then. If you're comparing them to 5 years ago, I think they're harder, a little harder.
Harder in what way?
More interesting hide problems, a little bit more elevation, again, more 3 hide searches, even just the ability for any one of them to be blank, which has happened within the last few years, that could make things harder. I do think you're seeing more close hides than you saw before, more little hints of elite type feel, without it going as far as elite does. Maybe more inaccessible, but I'm not sure about that. But, what any given person thinks is hard also varies a lot. I think there may be things that are challenging handlers' expectations. So I wouldn't say that handlers are getting worse, but I would say that some may be stuck in their expectations a bit. And so when things shift out of their expectations, you may see lower pass rates. Like Michael had a trial with a 3 hide exterior that was quite large. And I think Minnow was the only of 1 or 2 dogs to get an elevated wall hide at the very back of the search area.
Yeah, but it wasn't a hard hide.
It wasn't a hard hide, but it was a hard concept for the handlers because that area looked very boring and empty. And it was a big area and not a huge amount of time, at least in how the handlers felt about it. And so people just didn't go back there. And if they'd gotten back there, I think because it wasn't that hard of a hide, I think plenty of teams would have found it. and then the hide in the grass, different things that are challenging. Is it doable? Yes, but not if you are not doing all your jobs as a handler.
I think that they're not getting harder. I think that COs are getting more comfortable setting certain challenges, but the challenges, are all reasonable and what's allowed for within the rule book. I do think, I have to say, I'm going to talk out of both sides of my mouth now because I think teams are better than they used to be, but I also think they're worse than they used to be in a lot of ways. What I mean by they're better, I feel like the average dog has much better skills than they used to, especially at the lower levels.
Well, when we first got to NW3s with our first dogs, everything was so new. The sport was so new. The training was so new. I mean, not the underlying training, but a lot of the trainers didn't have a lot of experience themselves yet. I mean, they were just getting into NW3s, and so the training is so much better now because people have figured out so many things. They're able to prepare their students and the dogs and everything for much, much more than really could happen back when we first did NW3. And the trials are entirely different than they were back then.
Yeah. The trials that I went to with Minnow that had really low pass rates, I felt every single one of them was fair. Like I didn't leave a single trial and feel like that was an undoable trial, that I didn't know what I should do to train for it or anything like that. Where I had experiences like that with Lumi, where I just was like, I have no idea what to do. And maybe that was my own inexperience, but I do feel like
well, the COs are just so much more knowledgeable now.
That's what I feel like. Absolutely. Okay, sorry we didn't answer you, Holly, when you messaged here, but yes, you can share this as much as you'd like. We'd love anybody to watch this. Okay, so
we've got a comment here which is relevant to what we're just saying. What I have seen are hides that are not shelf stable, that reappear and disappear based on the conditions, which change dog to dog. So getting certain hides is sometimes luck based.
Yeah, and Dave is also saying, I think the worst teams are worse and the best teams are better. I would agree with that.
True. Yeah,
I would agree with that.
There definitely, I think early on, there wasn't really an ability to quickly get to NW3. So you had to do a lot of training to get there. And, I think now potentially you can get to NW3 less prepared in some ways than you could back in the day. And I wonder with the hides that are reappearing, disappearing, is this something that you're seeing like on a judging side, or descriptions that the CO is giving after the fact? I think that potentially with COs setting things a little bit differently than they had been for a while, either this, the conditions may not be as stable for that hide, but also maybe we aren't preparing teams for those volunteering, watching entire from start to finish. Yeah, that maybe we also need to up our training in the dog having to work hides that aren't just these, straightforward, sheltered, simple hides, that, we need to take them out into the wind and the rain and the HVAC turning on and off, and just, hey, work what's here and available now and try to give them, other conditions the next time, so that, hopefully the dogs can, even something that's ending up trickier maybe than the person before you, that the dog has the experience and exposure to work those out.
Yeah. So we have another person here kind of asking about how do I get a cue that they haven't cued in 7 attempts and that they get pronounced in first places in trials. We'd have to look at the patterns. Why are you failing? Are you missing hides? Are you falsing? What's going on here? If you're getting pronounced in first place, well, pronounced we don't know because judges, it's a subjective thing. So every judge is different. But with first places, my guess is you may be flying too quickly. And so maybe spending a little more time slowing down and covering your search area more, that might be the secret there. And that might mean you get fewer first places.
And I think also, like, at 7 attempts, you may have very different reasons that you're struggling now than you were struggling on trial 1 and trial 2. So you have to look at, how things are changing for you as a team as you're going, and also other things you might be doing. If you're trialing in other venues at other levels, maybe how those might also be impacting how NW3s are going.
Absolutely. Someone's requesting a Venn diagram to compare and contrast NW3 with AKC Detective. It's not, in my opinion, it's not appropriate to compare with Detective. It's more appropriate to compare with Master. To me, even though Detective contains a perfection element like NW3, Detective is more akin to Elite.
Yeah. I agree with that.
So yeah, but we can definitely look at a Venn diagram. I think there's more similar than there isn't.
Yeah, I mean, I think between Elite and Detective, there's the dissimilarity of like perfection versus not is the biggest thing. Yeah. And then with NW3 and Master, I think, differences are things like
having to pass all the searches in the same day.
Exactly. And then in AKC, you have a memory element of, does this particular search have a range of 0 to 3, or is it 1 to 3, or is it 1 to 4? Because some of the searches have a max of 4 and some of a max of 3. And then you have a total max of 6 in the interiors and minimum of 2. And so anyways, there's a lot to remember. But I do think that the overall day prep, not knowing how you're doing and it all impacting each other versus a given search only impacting itself in Master, are probably the most significant differences.
Absolutely. Okay, it's been 7 years since I last competed in NW3. What are some more impactful changes in NW3 since the rules shifted to allow for legs? I can tell you this because it took me off guard when I first competed with Minnow, and I called the false alert, and the judges were nice enough to say, by the way, you can keep searching, because I was ready to just take out, just leave and run away.
Yeah.
But yeah, so one thing is that you keep going.
Yeah, I think coming to NW3 with the rule changes, having competed before in 3, is a little bit harder than coming to these rules having never competed in NW3 before. It's like when they added the finish call to NW2. When I did NW2 with my first dog, there wasn't a finish call, and then I found it very difficult to teach myself to call finish when I knew how many hides there were, because in my brain that's not what the finish call meant. Whereas for people who came in with that rule, it's no big deal to call finish in NW2.
Absolutely. Okay, so now, is there anything else that we want to say?
Well, the other thing to that question, I think the blank being able to be in any element is a fair
you got to stay open-minded for sure.
Yeah, you have to, but I like that it's consistent. Every search you have to stay in the 0 to 3 mindset.
Yes.
But I think like a blank exterior is super fun. A blank vehicle is super fun. So I think it's
blank containers are adrenaline-inducing, but they're fun too. I think.
So I think that it has opened up some, for me, interesting differences in variety that weren't there so much before.
Okay, so what's the best strategy for success? Stay until your time almost runs out, or get in, get out, get done, get out of there?
I think we answered
that. We did, and I
neither.
No, I will say, if I have to pick between the two, get in and get out. I think you will end up with more successes that way than staying until, well, depends on the dog. I had a dog who was a false alerter. If you have a dog who won't false alert no matter what, then obviously the best strategy is stay in until you almost run out.
Unless that dog has no stamina.
Correct, because then you can run. It may not affect your first search, but it'll affect your last search.
Yeah. But I do think, as we talked about before, that finding the balance that's right for you and your dog, and not re-asking the dog about areas they've already told you they're done with. I think that's a real problem.
It's a false dichotomy, and really the right thing to do is right in the middle. Perfect. Do it perfect. Don't do it too fast or too slow. But if I have to pick one, I'm getting in and getting out. Are you staying until your time?
No, never.
Are you getting in or getting out? You pick one. Pick one.
But it is a false dichotomy.
I don't care. Pick one.
Of course, I would get in and get out.
Okay, that's what I wanted to know.
Get placements.
That's what I wanted to know.
But I think that if you're going in with either of those thoughts in your head, you're probably not helping yourself. And I also want to just say, because I've alluded to it a couple times, that I think going in to clear the space versus to find hides
Yes.
is really valuable. And that is related both to, like, don't expect there to be more hides than there are. Don't expect there to be less hides than there are. And don't ask your dog to keep clearing spaces they've already told you that they're done with.
So the last question is, how do you transition from NW2 to NW3? And I want to answer this by saying that if you have trained with us and your foundations are with us, you have all the skills that once you are in NW2, you can compete in NW3. So once you pass, just enter an NW3, and you'll learn from the trial what you need to work on. I don't think you need to do a transition. You would only need to do a transition if you don't have any experience with blank searches, which we give our students experience with blank searches on primary. But other than that, it's no different. You just have to, the only thing I tell my students is cover your search area. When you think you're done, say finish. That's basically it.
Yeah. And some people may need to spend some more time on mental management tools, which we haven't talked about a whole lot today, but if you're not familiar, you should definitely familiarize yourself with mental management, and find things that work for you. Because I do think the difference between a 2 and a 3 is the handler mind game, and that's what you need to learn how to play if you don't already know. And if you're working on NW2 now, you might as well be working on unknown numbers of hides, because it's not going to hurt you towards your NW2 at all. And yeah, find ways to expose yourself to unknown numbers and play with things like Dave was talking about earlier. With, I kind of think we're done. And then the memory pieces, where did you cover and not cover? Did you miss something? Maybe you didn't. Maybe you would have passed that, but you didn't search half the search area, so you could have missed something or whatever. But yeah, I totally agree with, when you get there, you have to try. I don't believe in ready to trial.
I think there's a transition from NW1 to NW2 that you have
big transition. Yes.
I think that's the big transition. NW2 to NW3 is not nearly as big of a transition.
No. If you have any stamina problems, you need to work on that, because it's even more searches than NW2.
Someone told me that about hunting training as well when I first started, was that it's a bigger gap from junior to senior than it is from senior to master, and that's absolutely true.
Well, and going like the nosework version of this is, there's only one hide in NW1 or novice in each search. To go to, there could be 1, 2, or 3
inaccessibles, distractions. Like it so much changes. Once you got that piece, just start jumping in it.
Now, if you feel like, because some people go and they get their first NW2 title, no big deal. And like my current trial dog, who's in Summit now, she got her NW1 and her NW2 within 3 months of each other. And so she was starting NW3 at 1.5 years old. So there was a lot that she hadn't been exposed to yet that she needed to. More repetition of a whole variety of different odor concepts and new locations, and a lot of different things. So if you get to 3 really quickly, you may need to really focus on foundation and really focus on exposure to a whole lot of new things to keep yourself from being as frustrated as you run into more challenging hide problems.
Absolutely. Okay, so when's the next NAMA? Thank you guys so much for your questions. They were really good.
Yes, we got a whole bunch of different comments. I think
and your engagement in the live stream was really rewarding for us.
Yes, I think NW3 is triggering, and that's part of why we called this Surviving NW3, and that's why there were so many comments and questions. We didn't even read all of them, because it is a level that creates a lot of feelings in a lot of people, and a lot of people do struggle with for a time. But I think it's really rewarding to conquer NW3 as well.
Yes. And also, what's the next topic going to be?
Yeah. So I think the next NAMA is going to be the 20th of January. And it'll be I think it'll be at 5 o'clock again.
Okay. 20th of January at 5. And we will post a topic at some point. If you have a request for a theme or a topic, let us know.
Yeah. Do you have anything you've been thinking about to get people's ideas flowing?
Yeah. What was the course that I was going to release that I've been working on really hard? Mastering multiple hides. So maybe a multiple hides converging close hide kind of extravaganza.
that's relevant to every level besides NW1 or novice.
Yep. So, anyways, let us know if you have any requests. We will see you on the 20th of January.
Yep.
Awesome.
Thank you all for being here. I'm sure there are 100 or 100,000 more things we could say about NW3.
Absolutely.
And I'm sure that some of the things that we have said may not jive with each individual's experience of NW3 because there is a lot of variety. But yeah, thank you all for being here.
Great. See you next time. Bye.